Hi, thanks for checking out my video. This is about the books that I've read this year. I read a lot, and so I didn't do every single book that I've read, but just the main ones. So I hope that you enjoy it, and I'll link all the books that I mention in the description. Who was a movie producer in the 1920s and 1930s in Hollywood. He was a sickly child and spent a lot of time reading, and he had a heart condition. The doctors didn't predict he would live very long, and so it was inspiring that he still achieved so much. And I marked a few pages of some key points. This is on page 360. And he said, "Nobody can teach you anything from his own experience, but he can find a key to you and make you open yourself up to reach the highest power you can reach, to make you never stop thinking. Many people are willing to settle for 70% or 80%. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want to settle for anything less than 100%. Now, I don't mean a 100% assurance that the audience will buy it, but the assurance that you have given 100% of what's in you." And that really inspired me as a young person, and even though he's talking about the audience being a movie audience, that actually applies, the principle applies to anything that you do. So that inspired me to always try and give 100% and to keep striving for better. Like he pointed out, it doesn't mean that you'll necessarily achieve that, but that you're giving 100% of what's in you. That has been a goal of mine, to do the best that I'm able to do and to always strive to do better. This is back on page 4. "Never hold an unassailable opinion. The clearness with which I see my goal determines my speed in reaching it. Expect help from no one. Pride goeth before a fall, and the height of the pride determines the severity of the bump. Never take any one man's opinion as final." And that was really good advice too. And this is from the preface. The author's talking about the films that Irving Thalberg produced. Irving Thalberg supervised all of them and personally produced scores of them, but unless you know Hollywood history, you might think they were made by Leo the Lion. Thalberg declined to affix his name to any film, simply saying, "Credit you give yourself isn't worth having." And wow, what a statement. And he just wanted to do what he did to the best of his ability, and he helped a lot of people. So this was a book that I really enjoyed. This book is called Life and Death Design. It's by Katie Swindler. It's actually for people who design things that are used by people under stress, including digital and physical products used in high stress industries. And I don't design things like that, but it was a really interesting book because it goes over human behavior, what happens in a moment of acute stress. And so I found it fascinating. It goes over what happens to humans in a stress response, the phases of the stress response. I found it really helpful for understanding why people behave in a certain way when under stress, why I behave in certain ways under stress. It has a lot of pictures and charts. The most essential thing, human connection. During the Blitz of World War II, as the Germans rained down bombs on London, many sent their children to the country to stay with friends and family farther away from the horrors of war. Decades later, as researchers began to study the effect of war on children, It was discovered that the children who were separated from their families had higher rates of lasting emotional trauma than the children who witnessed bombings, destruction, and death while remaining with their family members in the city. Human contact in a time of stress makes people mentally stronger, and companionship is a critical part of how humans process stress. Therapists often emphasize the critical importance of finding the right fit between therapist and patient. When that human connection clicks, it is often as effective as medication in helping people improve their mental health. People need people, especially when they are recovering from a trying experience. And that is such a good point, and it's so true about how important the human connection is. And I feel like that's lacking a lot these days. And so a brilliant book and very interesting, and a lot of good points and stories like that. So that's another book that I enjoyed reading this year. This is another book that I read. It's called Purposeful. It's a new book. It was printed in 2023. I enjoyed reading it and got some good insight and advice and refocusing on what's important. I'll share a few key points that I marked. Back in chapter 3, she talks about a story from World War II about an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist who spent 3 years in 4 different concentration camps. And in his observations, the difference maker with those who survived and those who didn't was meaning. Did the prisoner see his life as meaningful, see his suffering as meaningful? Did he have a reason to live beyond simple survival? Did he have a sense that all this mattered? If his answer was yes, then he was likely to survive. If his life was meaningful, his body was able to endure the cruel conditions. But as soon as a prisoner lost his sense of purpose, as soon as he began to assess his current situation as pointless and devoid of all significance, then those around him knew his days were numbered. Woe to him who saw no more sense in his life, Frankel said, no aim, no purpose, and therefore no point in carrying on. He was soon lost. Meaning was life or death for these prisoners. Meaning kept their hearts beating and kept illness at bay. Meaning was essential to their survival. So she says, and if I wake up one morning to find that everything I've ever wanted for my life came true, I can know that it won't satisfy the ache in my soul. No accomplishment or achievement, no work or position, no dream or calling could ever give me the sense of purpose my soul needs. I exist for something so much bigger than what life has to offer. I was made for the living God. Only the weather orchestrating, galaxy creating, sunset painting, sustainer of the universe will do. It doesn't matter whether I live my dream or watch it die, because I know the one I was made for. You can delight in the life you've been given because you live your life with Jesus. So long as you have him, you have all you need, all that you need. So long as you have him, you are free to enjoy all the work he gives you to do. This book is called 8 Dates, and it's about conversations to have mapped out over 8 dates. But it's also for people who are in relationships, because they're also good conversations to have. There are a lot of good insights in this book, a lot of good relationship advice and starting points for conversations to have. And I marked a few pages as usual for a few points that stood out to me and summarize the overall advice in the book. So this is on page 10, and it says, for newly committed couples, we want to emphasize that conflict will happen in any relationship, but if you avoid conflict now, you're guaranteed to have a lot more conflict later. The early part of a relationship, besides the fun and infatuation, is about establishing trust and a shared future. Inevitably, there will be bumps in the road as you try to navigate 2 different lives, 2 different childhoods, 2 different family histories. Listen and learn, share and invite. If you have an open heart and mind, your dates will go much better, and your life together will too. As couples that have been married a long time, we know what it's like to face issues that are difficult to discuss, to fail to understand each other, even to question our marriages. This is all normal, and by bravely tackling these conversations head on, you will enter into a marriage or relationship that's strong and resilient. Here's the news flash. Differences are the norm. Ultimately, your differences can enrich the relationship if you can understand and accept them. As you have these conversations, remember that most couples are more dissimilar than similar. That's okay. It's not about finding your idealized mate, your other half, or your alter ego. Our partners don't always have to think like we think. That's what makes life interesting. It would be boring to be married to yourself. In fact, that's called being single. Of course, many couples have core values that they share, but there are inevitably areas in which they're different. These differences attract us at first, and yet we can find ourselves in relationship trouble when we try to change these differences later. Learning to understand and accept the ways in which you're different is key to creating lasting connection and enduring love. One of the great gifts of relationship and marriage, and there are many, is the ability to see the world through the eyes of another person, intimately, deeply, profoundly, in a way we're almost never able to do with another human being. If you approach the mystery that is your partner with curiosity, your relationship and your life will be immeasurably enriched. And there's all sorts of good advice like that and perspective that I think it's important to be reminded of, especially in society today where there's not a lot of emphasis on commitment and working through differences. On page 42, choosing commitment. In a relationship, commitment is a choice we make every single day, over and over again. We choose it even when we are tired and overworked and stressed out. We choose it no matter what attractive person crosses our path. We also choose it every time our partner makes a bid for attention, and we put down our book, or look away from the television, or up from our smartphone, or stop whatever it is we're occupied with to acknowledge their importance in our life. This acknowledgement may call for just a smile or for a conversation, but whatever it calls for, we authentically try to deliver. When we make our relationship a priority by showing that it's a priority, we build trust and demonstrate our loyalty far beyond any words we say in our wedding vows. Here are the contents, organized by date 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And this is the Holy Bible in the CSB translation, the Christian Standard Bible translation, which I've never read before. I think I have 8 Bible translations that I've collected over the years, and it really helps reading the original texts in different translations because obviously they were written in a different language than English, and so it's insightful to read different translations that capture more of the meaning behind the original words. This one is really beautiful. It's a fabric cover that has flowers and scripture engraved on the back, and it comes in this fabric covered case. And another thing I liked about this Bible is that the pages are yellow cream colored, very light yellow creamy color, and so it's easier on the eyes than stark white, and especially reading in the sunlight, there's no glare, and there's room for notes on every single page. There's a margin for notes. And in the New Testament, all references to the Old Testament are in bold text, so that's easy to see when something is quoted from the Old Testament. I have a few favorite verses from Romans, and this one is from Romans 13, verse 8, and it says, "Do not owe anyone anything except to love one another, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not covet, and any other commandment are summed up by this commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Love, therefore, is the fulfillment of the law. That's so beautifully summarized. I love that. And this is also from Romans, it's back in Romans 12, verse 9. Let love be without hypocrisy. Detest evil, cling to what is good. Love one another deeply as brothers and sisters. Take the lead in honoring one another. Do not lack diligence and zeal. Be fervent in the Spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs. Pursue hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Give careful thought to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. This is a set of books by C.S. Lewis. It has Mere Christianity, The Screwtape Letters, Miracles, The Great Divorce, The Problem of Pain, A Grief Observed, The Abolition of Man, and The Four Loves. And I really enjoyed all of these. C.S. Lewis, most of us probably know from the Chronicles of Narnia, which I've also read since I was a child. But he wrote so many other works, and he has so many keen insights, and is a brilliant intellectual mind, and yet he's good at breaking things down for everyone to understand. And so I've gained a lot from reading his works. And he was an atheist, and then he became a Christian, and so he's very frank about what he went through and the questions that he had, and he has very insightful understanding of human nature, and like I say, he's very frank about it, very open, and I think that's important, to be able to be honest about questions that you have and things that are difficult to understand. And most of these works in here are nonfiction, but there are a couple fiction as well. Screwtape Letters is one of them. So I'll read a few excerpts from the various pages to summarize a few of the things that stood out to me. As you can see, I have things highlighted. There is a story about a schoolboy who was asked what he thought God was like. He replied that as far as he could make out, God was the sort of person who is always snooping around to see if anyone is enjoying himself and then trying to stop it. And I'm afraid that is the sort of idea that the word morality raises in a good many people's minds. Something that interferes, something that stops you having a good time. In reality, moral rules are directions for running the human machine. Every moral rule is there to prevent a breakdown or a strain or a friction in the running of that machine. That is why these rules at first seem to be constantly interfering with our natural inclinations. When you are being taught how to use any machine, the instructor keeps on saying, "No, don't do it like that," because of course there are all sorts of things that look alright and seem to you the natural way of treating the machine, but do not really work. What would really satisfy us would be a God who said, of anything we happen to like doing, what does it matter so long as they are contented? We want, in fact, not so much a Father in heaven as a grandfather in heaven, a senile benevolence, who, as they say, liked to see young people enjoying themselves, and whose plan for the universe was simply that it might be truly said at the end of each day, a good time was had by all. Not many people, I admit, would formulate a theology in precisely those terms, but a conception not very different lurks at the back of many minds. I do not claim to be an exception. I should very much like to live in a universe which was governed on such lines, but since it is abundantly clear that I don't, and since I have reason to believe nevertheless that God is love, I conclude that my conception of love needs correction. We must go on to recognize the real giver, It is madness not to, because if we do not, we shall be relying on human beings, and that is going to let us down. The best of them will make mistakes, all of them will die. We must be thankful to all the people who have helped us. We must honor them and love them, but never, never pin your whole faith on any human being, not if he is the best and wisest in the whole world. There are lots of nice things you can do with sand, but do not try building a house on it. When you find yourself wanting to turn your children or pupils or even your neighbors into people exactly like yourself, remember that God probably never meant them to be that. You and they are different organs intended to do different things. On the other hand, when you are tempted not to bother about someone else's troubles because they are no business of yours, remember that though he is different from you, he is part of the same organism as you. You can't see anything properly while your eyes are blurred with tears. The time when there is nothing at all in your soul except a cry for help may be just the time when God can't give it. You are like the drowning man who can't be helped because he clutches and grabs. Perhaps your own reiterated cries deafen you to the voice you hope to hear. After all, you must have a capacity to receive, or even omnipotence can't give. Perhaps your own passion temporarily destroys the capacity. The truly wide taste in humanity will similarly find something to appreciate in the cross-section of humanity whom one has to meet every day. In my experience, it is affection that creates this taste, teaching us first to notice, then to endure, then to smile at, then to enjoy, and finally to appreciate the people who happen to be there. Made for us? Thank God, no. They are themselves odder than you could have believed and worth far more than we guessed. This is another book by C.S. Lewis that I read this year. I had never heard of it before. It's called Till We Have Faces, so I ordered it to read after I heard about it. And it's different from his other books. It's really well written because he's a skilled writer, very talented writer. So it's very engaging, and it didn't take me long to finish it. And very well written, but it was just different than what I was expecting because it's a myth retold, the myth of Cupid and Psyche. And so it was just different from what I was expecting from his other works because I had just finished this one. It says that C.S. Lewis was fascinated by the myth of Cupid and Psyche throughout his life. And so this was his last novel that he wrote, and it's told from the perspective of Psyche's sister. And so it's very interesting and definitely worth reading, but it's not one that I would read over and over again. I'll probably pass it along to someone else. This is one that I found at a local bookstore, and it jumped out at me because sleep is always something that can stand some improvement for me. It has a lot of good tips, and it's broken down in 7 days. Of course, you don't have to read it in 7 days, but it's so you can follow along if you want to for 7 days. And it has some charts in the back, and it's well organized. I'll show a few pages from it. And then it has day 1, which is setting your internal clock, which the advice that he gives is to set a wake-up time and set an alarm. I have a sunrise alarm, which helps a lot. And it plays ocean wave sounds for the actual alarm. And so that's the key statement that he has for chapter 1. Pick your time and stick to it, because then that helps you go to bed at the proper time. And day 2 is about stress, handling stress better. And day 3 and day 4 is over how to deal better with worry, setting aside time to wind down. Of course, things come up in life where it's not always possible to get to bed on time or have time to unwind before bed, because things happen in life, and he knows that. He has young children, so he understands that, but his advice is to always keep working towards these goals to help you sleep better. And when things come up and you're not able to practice these things, just get back to it as soon as possible, because then you're always working toward a goal for better sleep. And proper sleep makes a big difference. This is about training the brain. And then day 7, the little question set to complete. I hope to see you in my next video.